Welcome to the Shyamcast. This is Brett.
This is Shyam.
Thanks so much for being here. Okay, Shyam, we are picking up in chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita. We've been
Mm,
hanging out here for a little while,
mm,
and Krishna has just told Arjuna about how he's very distracted and bewildered by this flowery
mm,
language of the Vedas.
mm,
And he says to him that when your mind, when you can get out of that, and when your mind remains fixed in the trance of self-realization, then you will have attained the divine consciousness.
mm, mm,
Um, this word samadhi is used
mm, mm,
in this verse.
mm,
Um, Probably a lot to say about that, but
mm,
essentially he's saying, look, you get to this point where you
mm,
are in a trance. Like,
mm,
you've this is when you get to this higher goal. You've
mm,
realized who you really are, and you're not going to feel all of these bewildering emotions that you're feeling now. And so Arjuna goes on to ask him, well, then what are the symptoms of somebody who has realized this? Um, Someone who is merged in transcendence, what are they like?
mm,
And he wants to know, sort of everything about this person. Like, what is his
mm,
language? How does he speak? How does he sit? How does he walk? Like really trying to get a very good image of who this person is
mm,
and what it would be like to witness them
mm,
just in action.
mm. Also, he wants to see for himself that does he lie in that category. So
Ah.
he's like, oh, can you tell me how he does everything so we can see for myself?
Mm, mm. So where would you want to start, Prabhuji? What does Krishna say in response to this?
Yeah, we can start with the questions that Arjuna asks.
Okay. So yeah, it's basically, or what he says is, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is thus merged in transcendence?
Mm,
So the symptoms, how can you tell?
mm, mm,
How does he speak? And what is his language?
mm,
How does he sit? And
mm,
how does he walk?
mm, mm, mm. So, um, there are three general questions he asks. First, he asks like, what are the general symptoms of a person who has attained samadhi? How does he speak? How does he sit? And how does he walk? Um, and it is said that the most important symptom, like for any symptom, there is primary symptom and secondary symptoms. Um, Primary symptoms are most important symptoms, and primary symptoms refers to how does he speak. Now, first, Prabhuji, if you can read 55, that discusses the general symptoms um, of a self-realized soul.
Sure. So he says, when a man gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification, which arise from mental concoction, and when his mind, thus purified, finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness.
Mm. So, what do you think about this?
Hmm. I think it sounds like I'm a long way off. Um, but I suppose it's like Krishna is getting deeper and deeper into this topic as we go along in this chapter. It feels
Mm,
like there's
mm,
a lot of talk about you have to suffer through the pain and also deal with the happiness of life. You have to remain equal, you know, um, try to remain balanced through all those things.
mm,
And so now it's like he's getting more into the detail of how that's done,
mm,
um, which is by giving up, as he says, giving up all varieties for desire of sense gratification. So talking more specifically about our senses and how we spend a lot of our time trying to satisfy the senses, um, fill those desires that are caused by the like our senses connecting to the objects of the senses, and like we want to reach out and grab those objects for ourselves. So he's talking more specifically about that, giving that up.
Mm,
Um, and it's interesting, he says, which arise from mental concoction.
mm, mm,
So all the things that we desire, whether it's looking, hearing, touching, tasting, smelling, it's all a mental concoction.
mm,
That's interesting.
mm,
And so then I guess, this is like a process of purification, being able to withhold. That's what I think, a lot of these verses pertain to, is like withholding from gratifying the senses,
mm,
sort of being able to like hold off.
mm,
Um, and yeah, he's getting into, at least for me, this is like some of the difficult, like there's like the work aspect, right, of practice, where it's like, um, there's a word that's or there's a term called tapas or tapasya,
mm, mm,
which
mm,
means austerity.
mm,
And I guess to me, this is what Krishna is describing here in part, is you have to practice a little bit of austerity to where you're not just like grabbing at all these things that you want anymore.
mm. And this is so difficult.
And it's very difficult.
So, Prabhu, um, my humble understanding on this respect is scary, because if somebody who just comes to Krishna consciousness and he hears these verses, and he'll be like, "No, this is not for me." Any common man will think in that perspective. But again, first thing is we are discussing about those who are self-realized. And one thing is also mentioned that we should not try to copy those or imitate those who are self-realized, because we are not there yet. So take some pressure off our shoulders that, okay, I don't have to do that from tomorrow. But then also shows that there is one positive aspect and there is one negative aspect. So Krishna is showing in this particular verse a negative aspect. But Krishna has shown in a previous verse and future also the positive aspect. So positive aspect is a deep divine taste in samadhi. But because he's taking shelter of such a deep divine taste, that he has no more attraction in this aspect. And that's why he is able to give it up. But in our situation, that taste has not yet developed. So our more of a shelter is from the senses perspective. Let's be honest, right? So that's where we lie. And that's why this verse looks very scary to us, because um, the higher taste has not been experienced yet.
Yeah, we
So,
just we or sorry, Prabhuji, we just to bring in something from last time,
uh,
Krishna mentions the most people, it's like they're also sort of bewildered by this language in the Vedas, and they think that that's all there is.
mm,
And so probably maybe just worth pointing out, it's like a lot of us are in this sort of position in life where we do think that essentially gratifying our senses, making ourselves happy, finding pleasure is really all there is. So if you
mm,
talk about withholding from that,
mm,
there's not really an understanding of what is going to replace it, right? Like
mm,
what this higher taste could be
mm,
that could
mm.
potentially replace that.
Think in this way also, Prabhuji. Like I have seen, there are multiple levels of pleasure. There is pleasure at the level of senses, at the level of mental. There is sensual pleasure, mental pleasure, intellectual pleasure, egoistic pleasure. And it is said that mental pleasures are higher than sensual pleasure, or intellectual or egoistic pleasure are way higher than sensual pleasure. And we see people who are like big, very successful people, suppose, or very determined, like big businessmen. I have seen them very strict with their senses. Like they have hardly any time to eat, and they're always running and always thinking of their business. And they even are away from their family for months, and they are like, it seems like so much tapa, but then they are really finding pleasure in some like a higher position in society, and being like all the reporters are around them and very successful, and they are staying there, so they don't much care about like what's my dinner today or what's my lunch today, or they even sleep like 3 hours 4 hours, then they are okay with that because just the egoistic pressure, intellectual pressure is too high. We see people who, I mean, there are many examples, but the idea is even those pleasure can take one away from sensual pleasure. And Krishna is here speaking about the sensual pleasure. So the idea means the higher pleasure, which is even beyond egoistic or intellectual mental pleasure, can really take us off this platform. But right now, where we are, the general recommendation is purify the senses and engage the senses in a spiritual way, and do something that can help them, that can help us purify the senses and gradually develop a higher taste.
Mm. Thank you.
Like it is. Hmm? Go ahead.
Thank you for making that distinction. Yeah,
Hmm.
I think that's yeah.
Like for example, say we have, our senses are not very like purified, but it is said that when those senses are engaged in the service of the Lord, the senses becomes purified. The eye seeing the form of the Lord, tongue tasting the food which is offered to the Lord, the hands and legs in serving the Lord in some way or the other, or visiting these wonderful spiritual places or holy places. So in this way, the senses who are very currently attached slowly becomes attached to the Lord.
And kind of going along with that, then with verse 56, Krishna's talking about keeping an evenness of mind, essentially how one of the like the results of what you're talking about is not being disturbed. So he says, one who is not disturbed in mind, even amidst the threefold miseries, or elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called a sage of steady mind. So it's like he's describing another, another one of these symptoms when somebody starts developing a higher taste, spiritual taste, is the disturbances of mind go away.
How would you, how do we describe that these sensual pleasure arise from mental concoction?
Hmm.
How do we understand that?
Um, well, I can try.
Hmm.
Um, suppose that's all I can do. Um, I suppose I would try to describe it like, I mean, it's something that I think we all kind of know, or we all sort of are aware of, if we think about it, like our mind is sort of always uh, sometimes it feels like attacking us, or let's say
Mhm.
bothering us, um, sort of poking and prodding us, or leading us towards all these different things that we want.
Mhm.
Um, and I think if you really just try to sit still for for a moment, or we really consider it, it's like the minute you try to really just notice what's going on, all those thoughts, like they just come rushing in.
Mhm.
Um, and it's a very distracting, it's, sort of like, I guess what's being described with Arjun, it's distracting and it's bewildering. Sometimes
Mhm.
there's such like an influx of either I want this or I want that, or even, it's different things. It's not just sort of like an animalistic, just like I want this and I want that. I think as humans, there's a really complex like set of emotions and thoughts and feelings that are sort of always going on. And so, like, for example, we may be feeling regret about something. I really wish I
Mhm.
hadn't. You sit down and then suddenly you just start thinking of that thing you said or didn't say, that thing you did or didn't do. Started thinking about your relationships with people, you know. I think generally speaking, everything is all of those thoughts are centered around like the ego or the I, myself, right?
Yeah.
Um, but we're just sort of, it's just like bombarded, by these things. Um, and so I guess I mean, that's my long and drawn out answer to your question.
Mm. Mm. Also, our whatever pleasure we experience is based on our past experiences now,
uh, yeah, they're memories.
the memories.
Yeah.
And it is said the mind wants to repeat the pleasurable experiences. So now we have a lot of memories. And now I want to choose to pick one of those memories and do that, and one of those memories and do that. So it's on an external platform. There is no pleasure of the soul at this point of time. It's all the senses, the objects, their interaction, and want to repeat those because that's the only source of pleasure that we can think of in general. And it's all on a surface level. At the deeper level of the soul, it's not accessible. So this is where we revolve. So Krishna says withdraw from that. Actually, the first thing is get to the heart level, experience there. Then it's easy to withdraw from there. Until the meantime, cultivate that on a daily basis. And here, restrict which are not good for us. But something which is not harmful, we can engage our senses in those terms. Can you think of some sense engagements which are not harmful for us? And it's okay to do those.
One would be eating prasad.
Yeah, eating food, sanctified food, and you can eat pizza, pasta, drinks. I mean, uh, smoothies like juices, those kind of drinks, and burgers, which is like vegetarian or vegan. So there are so many things that we can enjoy our tongue with. Just offer it to the Lord, my Lord, everything you have given, and I want to offer it back to you. Everything's coming from you. You accept it first, and I will eat your remnants. And then it purifies the tongue. We are engaging in sensual pleasure, and that's purifying the tongue. Takes so much pressure off. If somebody says no, you have to eat just one times in just dry leaves and roots, and you'll be like, ah, this is not for me. But Lord Chaitanya, he said it's very joyfully performed.
Yeah, I really just to speak on that a little bit and my experience of that. The things, I really like that point about, prasad,
Mm,
um or like sanctified food, as you say,
mm,
food that's been offered. Um, people have said to me like if, okay, everything comes from God, right?
mm,
Um, in a sense, I guess in a very real sense, nothing is really ours.
mm, mm,
That's part of the whole like this lesson of impermanence and letting go of things is that you don't get to keep anything when you go. I mean, everything changes and so eventually goes away. And so,
mm,
we don't really own anything on
mm,
this earth. We're like
mm,
we get to use it, right?
mm,
Like it's there, we're here. It's things are there, for us to use, but we don't own all of these things.
mm,
And it's it's been likened to like when a little kid goes to the garden in their home and like picks a flower and hands it to their mother,
mm,
and you know it's like that's equated with essentially offering food,
mm,
as we do.
mm,
While the child had nothing to do with growing the flower, it's not their flower, you could say, but he picks it, gives it to his mother, and that is a more significant thing to the mother than probably anything else, you know.
mm, mm,
Um, and so, it's described in that way. If
mm,
you just sort
mm,
of genuinely offer your food,
mm,
uh, it's like Krishna is more pleased with that than anything else. It's
mm,
everything's his
mm,
anyway.
mm,
Um, but
mm,
it's sort of like you're just you're the kid offering a flower,
mm,
and it's very
mm,
simple, but it's like that's where like the love
mm.
really enters. Like that's, how you express that. That's how you try to
Mm,
get closer and build that relationship.
mm, Wonderful. And then what about other senses now? So that is tongue.
Mm,
Now, another thing is we doesn't need to renounce. We can be in this world, engage everything that we deal in this world, and just add a spiritual sense to it. Make spiritual life really, really simple. Whether it's a car, whether it's a house, a nice kitchen, a nice bed, whether it's a refrigerator, laptop, mobile, whatever we interact with, we just make it more centered around spirituality. So because we are already we are on an external platform, we are not at the soul level yet. So we can relate everything to the divine and make spirituality so much easier.
mm. Yeah, it doesn't carry all of that weight of like this is mine, like
Uh,
all of that. You sort of get weighed down with,
mm,
like I own this and I own that, and
mm,
I guess there's feelings of sort of pride and kind of like
mm,
importance. There's inflation of
mm,
the ego that goes along with those things, and all of that just kind of it just goes away. You just don't need that, if
mm,
it's a simple like the recognition.
mm,
um this just isn't all, it's not all about me, it's not all for me. I'm just
mm,
trying
mm,
to use this to serve as best as
mm.
I can.
Then the nose is there. The nose wants to smell. So we buy fragrances and we may love fragrances, but then we have incense. And when we go to a place where incense is offered to the Lord, then that smell is like so pleasing. Wow. And we get perfume that we offer to the Lord and we smell the perfume. Oh, this is wonderful. So that the nose is getting purified.
Yeah,
It's not like, no, no, no. Huh?
temples smell very good. Smell very
Haha.
good.
Very nice. Yeah. Yeah. All the time. And then ears are there. And so ears, like we hear, say, these discussions we are hearing, discuss about Gita, so much pleasing to the heart. But the moment there is discussion about something, some other like maybe politics or something, immediately anxiety will come. But when we discuss about the divine, we're like, ah, very nice. So again, we are not withdrawing anything. We are just properly engaging there. We are directing them for a much, much satisfying cause. Then the eyes are there. I mean, the eyes are a little difficult because there are many forms that the eyes may want to capture, but it is described the beautiful form of the Lord are very attractive. You heard about the word Madan Mohan,
I have heard it. Yeah.
uh, and uh, is the Western culture aware of Cupid?
Yes.
Okay, so what
He's
do we say about the Cupid here?
he's a little I don't know, he's um
Little beast.
he's like I was gonna say he's like a little guy. Uh like he shoots you with his love arrows and then you fall in love. That's Cupid.
Yes. So, how does he work is when we see the eyes of another person. So, and that's how the arrows are shot by this guy Cupid. And then we immediately feel like, oh, this is so nice, so attractive. So, and then the eyes wants to see those forms again and again or different things, and the eyes becomes very attractive. And the Lord is called by the name Madan Mohan. Madan means Cupid in Sanskrit, and Mohan means one who attracts. So Madan Mohan means one who attracts Cupid. So Cupid is the most charming personality. He's so charming that he can make us attract anything else. And Krishna is Madan Mohan means he's so charming that even Cupid faints when he sees Krishna. Like, so Krishna can attract anyone, but our eyes somehow are not tuned to it. Now think about it. This is very interesting point. His Holiness Sadhana Swami Maharaj he mentions: are we attracted to a female ant
No.
or maybe a female elephant? I mean, we like both elephant, male elephant and female elephant. But if we see a female elephant, it's not like I'm going crazy now. It's not like that kind of feeling. You know? But when a male elephant sees a female elephant, he's gone in a way. Like, for example, male peacock and female peacock, peacock and peahen. So when we see male and female peacock, does anything happen to us?
Mm-mm.
But when a male peacock sees a peahen, then he starts all this wings. Only male peacock has this wings, and he started dancing. So Maharaj was mentioning that how it is based on our false identification. It's
Mm.
not the beauty which lies there. It's also a conditioning. That's why male elephant behaves differently. When a male elephant or a male peacock, she is the most beautiful female human. Does anything happen to them? They don't care. For them, all looks alike. Two ants walking. For us, they all look alike. All elephants look alike. All ants look alike.
Mm.
But for them, there is a real distinction.
Mm.
So Hara said it's all how this illusory energy works. Just
Mm.
we are conditioned in a particular way, and the eyes are conditioned a particular way. It's very difficult to get out of this. I fully agree. But that's why the Lord form is such that the Lord is called all attractive, that all the forms are attracted to his form.
Mm. Yeah, that I guess that sticks out to me, Prodigy, is like it really gets to that maybe the difficulty or just the because we are like we're in a human body. We are
Uh,
human beings, right?
uh,
Just like an elephant is in an elephant body, it's living a real life as an elephant.
uh,
Same with an ant, same with anything else. And we have the DNA of a human being, we have the hormones of a human being. Like we have all those things and like we have to live that life. And so I guess, that's what we would say like on the material level, right? But what we're talking about is trying to get to transcend that or understand what we are, that is what the greater thing is, like what when you
mm,
take all that stuff, all those outer coverings and everything away, what is your essence, like what are
mm,
you?
mm,
And so yeah, no, I really like that point, Maharaj made. It's like obviously I'm not attracted to some other animal, um
mm.
but that really points to how like that's how trapped we are
Uh,
in the bottle, like in the false ego, right?
uh,
And in this
got
identity as
you.
this thing.
The soul is totally different. We all are spirit souls. We all are part and parcel of the Lord. That's what Krishna says in fifth chapter, equal vision. They see everybody on a deeper level, whether a cow, an elephant, a dog. But then there is this ego, as you mentioned, and it's very thick, bro.
Mm. So yeah, I guess that would be another one of the symptoms, right? Like Arjun is asking about the symptoms of someone who's realized this. One of them, as you just said, is that they see everybody on that soul level, or
Mm,
every living being on that soul
mm,
level. And
mm,
so in this very in I guess you could say in a more real sense,
mm,
they
mm,
see all life as the same thing,
mm,
as the
mm,
spirit.
mm. So, what is the next question that Krishna asks? Then he asks, first he says, what is the general characteristic? What is the characteristic of one who is self-realized?
Hmm.
And what is the next question he asks Arjuna?
He wants to know how this person would speak and what his language is.
Mhm. So, how does he speak?
So,
And that is answered in verse number 56 and 57.
hmm. So 56. So this was one I read. I will, I'll just read it again
Okay.
and then I think I want to talk about. maybe a couple areas specifically, but so
Mm,
one who is not disturbed in mind, even
mm,
amidst the threefold miseries, or
mm.
elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called a sage of steady mind.
Mm.
So,
And mhm.
or sorry, go ahead, Proji.
I'm saying, can you read the next one also? So we discuss
Ah,
both together. They're
sure.
connected.
Yeah, and then 57. In the
Mm.
material world, one who is unaffected by whatever good or evil he may obtain, neither praising it nor despising it, is firmly fixed in perfect knowledge.
These are very difficult and very high verses to discuss.
Hmm,
Okay.
yeah. So one question I would have off the bat,
Mm.
he mentions in 56 the threefold miseries.
Mm.
Can you talk about what the threefold miseries are?
Mm. So threefold miseries, they are three in number. They are arising from our own mind and body miseries. Can you think of some misery arising from our own mind?
Probably a lot of them, yeah. Um, but I suppose like hunger and thirst, like arising from our body.
Uh-huh.
Various mental anxiety, a mental
Uh-huh.
state arises
Uh-huh.
from our own body. So that's one of the threefold miseries.
Mm. Then finding fault in somebody,
Mm,
judging somebody. They're
mm.
all miseries, or somebody says, you are not good for anything. And we think for a few days, really? I'm not good for anything. Good for nothing, really. So then we are miserable. Somebody spoke some word that pains our heart. So again, it's misery arising from our own mind. Mind includes whether it is ego is hurt or it's the same thing, like an internal suffering, or my health is not good, or my financial condition is not good, or this state situation is not good, or these are all whatever caused by ourselves within us, which is like the most prominent ones, is because of is mind. And then the second fold misery is misery because of other living entities. Maybe there is a mosquito. If he bites, we get malaria. Or there is some kind of, I think, ivy. What is called? If you touch those plants, it keeps on. You keep on scratching and
Yeah, poison ivy or poison oak or
poison
something.
ivy. Other living entities. Or what else can we think of? Misery because of other living entities. Some viruses, maybe.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, no, for sure, Proji. I mean, I guess like any 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 animal that's a prey animal,
uh,
which is almost all of them, they
uh,
suffer from there's some animal out there that's poisonous
mm,
or plant, like you said, that's poisonous or
mm,
a dog bites you,
mm.
yeah.
Other
Would you s-
living entities.
would you say, I mean, like, the example of somebody says something that hurts you like inside, would that be an example of maybe both of these first two?
Yeah, they are combined. They're not
Yeah,
like discrete. One here, so no, it's all
sure.
combined. Actually, one of the verse in Bhagavatam says the only misery is because of the mind. And all threefold miseries can be contained in misery from the mind. Very nice. He said the mind is the only source of all the troubles. Then I have like usually it is seen people have somebody in their life that they don't like. I'm sure you don't have anybody in your life you don't like. Uh, but there were times in the past, especially when we have somebody in our life we hate. But now naturally we are trying to practice spiritual life. But these are misery because of other living entities.
Mm.
And then there
Can
is
I, or sorry, Prabhuji, but just something that makes me think of like This is one of the really, really great benefits of even just trying to live a spiritual life and being around people doing that. Like when you encounter somebody who maybe in the past you say that you would have disliked or hated even somebody who you just seem to like collide with
Mm,
or it's like a personality that kind of clashes with yours. In a spiritual context, that's actually seen as a gift. It's like you spiritual like the spiritual practice, a lot of like the trick of it seems to be like everything that would have been a negative, you turn into a positive, or like you
mm,
find the way in which it is a positive.
mm.
Um, this is like I know that like a lot of times when you say something to me that about like how there's good news or something, I sort of am like I think that some bad news might be coming. Like if you're like, let's check my internet connection, you're like, oh great, and then it's like the speed's like two. um, it's that's just an example. But I mean, I think you definitely have been an example to that of me. Throughout the year and a half that I've known you, and like every time you like going back to that example of a person, like every time you meet somebody where there's just like an issue, you clash, you want to fight with them, you just like you disagree with them, like everything about I guess everything about that person, it could be said
Mm,
is some sort of reflection of what you don't like about yourself, something in you, um,
mm,
that you're actually sort of like you don't want to admit, or you're not able to quite see, what it is. But
mm,
um, if you can really try to work with that, right? It's not like not just reject this person, don't have that frame of mind that I just don't like
mm,
that person, or
mm,
um, but sort of, make an effort to figure that out, like, get more in touch with that person, like really try to figure out what's going on. How can I overcome this, it's
mm,
like this feeling of not liking somebody just sort of comes on you. It's like the feeling of anger just sort of like comes, and it's very interesting to I guess step back a little bit and just so that you notice that, right?
mm,
And just maybe ask the question like, why did this feeling just come on? Like
mm,
what is the cause of this?
mm,
And it's a real I mean it's a lot of things, a humbling experience
mm,
for
mm,
sure. You have to face things about yourself. Um, there's certainly difficulty with facing something like that, but it really becomes such like a rewarding, like it's an uplifting
mm,
experience, like you really face a challenge directly.
mm,
And that's something that, a spiritual community, a spiritual practice is always going to try to
mm,
encourage you, to
mm,
do. So I just wanted to mention that.
mm. So, I mean, I was just reflecting as you were speaking, like, so how do we deal with the person? Say the mind says, I hate
Mm,
this person. So, how is it that we can, like, we can try to overcome those feelings and see positivity in them? Like, I just can't stand this person, and I just he's my enemy, or those things aren't there. So
mm,
one quote, Bhakti Tirtha Swami, if you have heard about him, a great spiritual leader. He's an Afro-American, amazing personality. So he mentions, see every relationship that you encounter as your relationship with God is dependent upon how you deal with the person. When you meet any interaction, think that your relationship with God is dependent upon this interaction, this relationship. So a devotee has fear. It's a positive fear, and fear of displeasing him. Because thing is, a devotee, he wants to experience the Lord, and he's very attached to that relationship. So he doesn't want to hamper that relationship or anything. And he knows that if I displease or don't like any living entity, this relationship is hampered. So because he doesn't want to compromise with this, he does a work around here. So this is not hampered.
Mm, mm,
But if there is no such relationship, then there is nothing I'm trying to achieve, or there is nobody I'm trying to please or I'm trying to serve. Then it's like, I like him, I don't like him, rejected, accepted, and then there is no vertical relationship then.
mm. So it reminds me of what we talked about a little bit last time with uh, how we're all described as being part and parcel of God. We're all that
Mm,
little piece. And
mm,
so in a way, it's like it's
mm,
it's illogical actually to dislike any other being. It's
mm,
like the hand not like doesn't like the foot or something,
mm, mm, mm,
Um, it doesn't make sense. You're all a part of the
mm.
same thing. And so yeah, it's like you're bewildered if you don't like somebody in a way, right? Because you're
Ah,
like, everybody in essence is that pure self.
mm.
And so um I mean, this is a very difficult thing to do, obviously. We're not talking about something that's just to be
Yes.
expected of all of us walking around outside, um but yeah, I mean, this is what's I guess this is what you try to do, right? I mean, you
Mm,
really look way up
mm,
at a goal that's very far away, but you try to
mm,
keep your gaze on that goal.
mm.
Um, yeah,
Now think about a child. He sees a fire and he wants to touch the fire. He touches the fire. Hand is burnt and there is boil in his fingers. Pus comes out, and then 2 months, and then he's like recovering, and so much scratching and again bleeding, and he's like lot of suffering, and then he finally recovers. And do you think when he sees the fire next time, will he touch it again?
I don't think so.
Yeah, yeah. So likewise, when we hamper our relationship with any other living entity, it compromises our relationship
Mm,
and brings lot of misery because that relationship is compromised. And then it takes a long time to bring that relationship back. And now, very careful. And again, sometime because the conditioning is very strong, again, the mental or the ego, and they're very strong. Again, the moment there is a bad interaction, not careful or cautious interaction, again, this is hampered. So if we are trying to harm somebody, we only are the most harmed person. Like example is given, you hold a red hot iron rod to hit somebody, and the first thing that happens is our hand gets burned. So the misery comes to us only. Likewise, it's very when we become more and more spiritual, as we start walking in this direction, we start deriving some relationship and some joy in that relationship or some peace in the relationship, how different people describe differently, some satisfaction in that relationship. And then when that is hampered, then the life becomes like a roller coaster ride. It's like very unstable life. It's like 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 we are thrown here and there and just cannot be composed anymore. You're like, oh no, that's so much turbulence. And then we don't want that. So one becomes more and more careful. Why? Because we get burned so many times. And like, it is said that experience is the best teacher many times.
mm,
Another aspect to see that is it is also said that when we see fault in somebody, like we point one finger and three fingers point to us. So the reason we have those faults, so we are seeing the fault in somebody. The moment we see, we are like, why is my mind is like this? So again, comes back to okay, finding fault in oneself.
mm.
Another
Yeah.
one more aspect I will say, and
Hmm.
Prabhupada also says, uh, uh, s- fan the spark.
Mm,
So if you see very little fire and there's a lot of smoke around, and if you a little bit fan it, then smoke goes away and fire comes out. Likewise, Prabhupada said a devotee should see little spirituality and should think only of that one thing. It is said there are multiple kind of people. One kind of people, they see little bad and they see so much good, and they expand the bad so much and they say he's the worst person ever. And then there is another personality who sees so much bad in the other person, full of faults, and there's little bit good, and he just focuses on little bit good, and he thinks and he just magnifies the good, and he sees he's such an amazing personality. So again, it's we are, and it is said the spiritual life naturally bring us in variation from one who magnifies the fault to one who magnifies the good. And we try to see little good and see all the fault in us and a little good in them. And then we think, oh, he's amazing person. And everything else, ignore, ignore, ignore. Just focus on little good.
Mm. Yeah, finding fault with people, it really is a very painful thing. And
Yes.
getting angry and upset at people, it's very painful. It's one of those things that like we've talked about, like it's sweet at first. Like it does feel like there's a pleasure that goes along with anger and that goes along with even like being annoyed at somebody and criticism is can be very pleasurable, at first. But it's like to me a lot of this is like it's a process of paying more attention. And it's like when you really pay more attention to what's going on, you sort of see that it's like I got basically a big boost of ego um, by criticizing somebody. And then it just sort of all crashes. And then, it's like, then it really does start to feel poisonous. It starts to feel bad. And so I guess just, yeah, to expound on like what you're talking about, where like you keep getting burnt. You just keep noticing these things like, man, every time this happens, I just keep going through this cycle, this process. And what happens in the end is that I feel worse off than I was before. I just don't feel good anymore. I just want to stop it.
And what is the source of pleasure when we find fault in somebody or somebody says, this person, he is like that, and this is his fault. And suppose that fault is not in you. And this a general example. Somebody has a fault, like it becomes very small thing becomes angry. And suppose we at small things don't become angry, then it gives us joy.
Yeah, the
Really?
superiority.
Yes.
Mm,
Why? Because I am not like that. That's actually ego.
mm.
Why? Because the pleasure is coming from I am better than somebody else. That's why when anybody says anything bad to us about somebody, at first it may feel like a source of joy. But it is also said, like Radhanath Maharaj, I have seen him, an example of him. Anybody goes to him and says anything bad about any person, he cannot tolerate it. So that's like when we become pure, we cannot stand somebody's fault. We see many examples from these great souls. When they hear bad about anybody, they just walk out. They think, I'm honeycomb, like Saraswati Thakur, Prabhupada's spiritual master. When somebody would speak bad about anybody else, he would say, I myself is honeycombed with faults. So I have no rights to hear
Mm.
somebody else's fault. And then he would walk out. I have seen this strong distaste. Prabhupada says that's a test of our advancement. Does it feel like nectar when somebody criticizes somebody, or does it feel like poison? And
Mm.
we don't have to speak about ourselves. We will be very much ashamed.
Yeah.
But those great souls are like
Mm.
that.
Well, yeah. I feel like I'm a pretty big honeycomb in that case, but yeah, amazing Proji. I mean, it's amazing. Like when you hear stories like and you really see it in with many people too. Like you see these things really play out in their actual personality. Like, and you see that like, yeah, someone just cannot stand, to hear something like that. And I guess, at least from my own position, I always feel like I have to go back to like I guess maybe this is like a where I'm at essentially. Like I have to reason it out, you know.
Mm.
That's how I feel like I really learn, slowly learn these things and actually get some benefit from them. It's like if I imagine that scenario, somebody says something bad about somebody, I get this little weird boost of pleasure that somebody else is being talked about, especially if I don't have that, characteristic. It's like, then it's sort of, it creates an expectation in my own mind. I better not become like that, right? I have to make sure that I'm not like that, which creates an anxiety.
Mm.
Um, Now I have a strange anxiety about like being around this person or being, it's like all of these, it's like a million things just start to pop up, right? From that one little like bit of pleasure you got. And, that ultimately like it just doesn't lead to a good place. It just
Mm.
leads to like more of those negative feelings and emotions, and that's kind of just what you're left with in the
Mm.
end, so a thing that at least I feel like I have to like experience again and again, in many different ways, but it's like eventually you get burnt enough times and you really do stop putting your your hand over the fire.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
the opposite effect is when somebody hears one's glories,
Mm.
there is some joy in the heart.
uh
If somebody experiences that, then that person will experience joy when somebody else is criticized. They go in parallel. They are one and the same thing. And the other person, like, I mean, we may say that no, no, we may become uncomfortable, but there is some joy in the heart still, which is unknown to anybody except us.
Mm.
But then the other person, he cannot tolerate hearing bad about others. He cannot tolerate hearing good about others. Within the core of his heart, he feel like both go hand in hand.
Mm.
Both are freedom from false ego and a
Yeah, that.
manifestation of false ego.
Mm. Yeah, I notice even when you tell the story like about His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj, I feel like when maybe it's someone with someone like that, or someone who's, exalted to such an extent, like you're just at least like you just feel happy to hear about them, like
Mm.
when somebody like that is glorified, it's just such a nice thing, just to hear like what they said, what they did. Um, And yeah, that's also a very uplifting thing. It's another thing you get a lot in a spiritual community. You hear a lot of people like saying positive things about others, right? It's
Mm.
just,
Mm.
there's a lot of like um even just small examples of glorifying somebody, like so and so did all the cooking tonight, and it's like they worked so hard, they showed up 2 hours early, they bought all the ingredients, there's a lot of emphasis and like a lot of effort put into really
Mm.
making sure that everybody sort of gets, the
Respected.
good things
Mm.
people do, yeah, get pointed out. And,
Mhm.
it's a very happy thing. Everybody is celebrating for each other.
Mm. Like recently, there was a small interaction with Radhanath Maharaj. So Maharaj said, it's very nice to see everything that is happening in Grand Rapids. And then we told Maharaj that Maharaj, some of the devotees met Maharaj in Sadhu Sangha. So then devotees told Maharaj, Maharaj, all we need is we just want to please you and serve you. And our goal is just if by any of our service, if you are pleased, that's what we are looking for. Then Maharaj had a big beaming smile on his face. And then he said, I'm very grateful. So, like these pure souls, now it may seem like it may seem like a common man also may become happy if somebody tells them, if we just want to serve you or please you, or we just need your blessings. A common man will also be very happy. But that the reason may be different. The one reason may be because ego is very nicely glorified and one feels very nice. But for a great personality of pure souls, it's like they know that this is their consciousness is good. The what they're thinking or what they are doing or their consciousness is pleasing to Guru and Krishna. So a guru is pleased or a pure personality is pleased by seeing that we are doing well in our spiritual life. Okay, the concepts they're applying nicely. So there is no pleasure for them at a level of ego. Everything is centered around others. And if others are growing or doing good and advancing or pleasing, or Krishna's name is getting spread, or Prabhupada mission is spreading everything about others, and that gives joy to them. It's like that selfless, selfless joy of care for others.
Mm.
So, and then you can see if somebody is getting pleased because of false ego, or somebody is very purely, then you can sense that also. It's very nice just to spend a few moments with such great personalities in our lives.
Mm. Yeah, thank you, Prabhuji. Mm. Well, I unfortunately we're at a point where I actually have to get going soon. Um, and I wish we could keep talking for a lot longer about these things. Um, one thing I just want to maybe we can close out with, but just to finish the threefold miseries, basically.
Mhm.
So, the second one was miseries from other living beings. Um, and the third one would be from natural
Calamities.
sources. Yeah.
And again, it boils down to our mind also.
Mm,
COVID is there. Now it's all about, am I miserable because COVID is there? But I'm like dependent, like, okay, whatever Krishna wants. Being careful and then depending on Krishna and continue what needs to be done. Or I'm like panicking and like it's again based on how we deal with those situations.
mm,
Or like care about others, concerned about others, and how can I serve in this situation? And for oneself dependent, being careful oneself and being dependent upon Lord's mercy. And whatever comes or goes is Lord's mercy, and seeing a positive aspect in everything, a concern, a loving aspect in everything is just one approach. And the approach is panic and, oh, he's gone, should not happen to me, or become very self centric.
mm,
This it becomes a misery then. Again, it's a mind.
mm. The example that jumps out to me is in Michigan, we really like to complain about the weather because it's all over the place, especially
Uh,
like the seasons when it's supposed to be warm. If we have a cold day or, whatever it is, it snows when it's not supposed to or something. Um, there's a real tendency, to, I don't know if, it's like finding fault with the weather or basically just like letting our mood
mm,
um, be upset because of what's happening, externally. And, Krishna mentioned earlier in this verse, it's like the winter and summer seasons, they come and go, just like pain and pleasure. And if you can not allow that mind to get disturbed,
mm,
have some control over it instead of letting it control you
mm,
in those situations, um, you're going to be a lot happier.
mm. And that is possible by focusing the mind on something else. If we contemplate on anything that we don't like, we will discuss that next week, I guess. Then, or contemplate on weather, then depression will come. But if you're not focusing on that and we are busy with our positive activities, then no time to think about that.
Oh, yeah, very good, Proji. So yeah, basically we're discussing some of the symptoms of a person in transcendence and a little bit about how they speak, right? Like how it's like
Mm.
how do they act, how do they talk to
How,
people,
or
right?
how do
And
they
how do they
respond?
respond?
Mm.
Yeah. And so yeah, we'll get into some of the other like how does he sit and talk and things like that in our next episode. So yeah, thank
All
you so
right.
much, Proji.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's a
And thank
joy
you to you for
always.
listening.
Yeah. Thank you. We'll end now. Bye for now.